Hey, what's happening with everybody? My name is Haydn Adams with A Designer That Codes. In today's tutorial, I want to show you how to build a basic navigation. We have our title logo at the top, and we have page 2 and back to page 1. I want to show you how to create a basic navigation utilizing the React Bootstrap framework. This is a modern day version of the classic Bootstrap you can find at getbootstrap.com. And we're going to utilize Gatsby.js, one of my favorite tools to use in building static sites on the web. And with that, let's get started. For today's tutorial, I'm going to work with the Gatsby Starter default little design right here. We can always see Mr. Spaceman to know that that is the default starter design. And I am running it. I've got home, Gatsby default starter, and I'm running it over here in Gatsby default starter. If you are brand new to Gatsby.js, I have another video that explains how to install Gatsby for the very first time. That is required for this tutorial to work. So just FYI, if you are brand new into Gatsby, you can't just download the Gatsby starter and make it work. You have to go through a series of steps from Homebrew in the Mac, Xcode, Node.js. It's about 4 or 5 different pieces you have to install. But the good thing is, once you have it installed, you can rock and roll. The trick is basically to come down, install a new version of Gatsby, and then run, like I did right here. Where is it? The very top. I ran a Gatsby develop somewhere in here. There it is. A Gatsby develop, and it's now running on the localhost 8000. So that's where I'm starting from. The second part we have to do is head over to React Bootstrap, which is reactbootstrap.github.io. I'm going to use this framework. I'm going to stop my server, and I do use yarn versus npm. So I'm going to copy the React Bootstrap and the Bootstrap, and on my version, I'm going to say yarn add, paste, and this is going to install. Once again, you can install with npm or yarn. Doesn't matter which way you want to go. I am a total yarn fan. I just got used to using yarn early on and hadn't really jumped back to the npm world, which is a node package module. So for me, it's all about the yarn side of things. You can go whichever way you want to go, but then again, it's up to you. So I have to install Bootstrap first to get this working. It won't just work on the get-go. I really wish Gatsby would have some kind of Gatsby starter with React Bootstrap, but until that happens, I have to go install it manually. It's not that hard. It takes all about 30, 45 seconds. It's almost done right here. Building fresh packages, the cores, the sharps, the whatever else it's got to install. I thought it would take a little bit quicker. Famous last words when we record live on camera. So moving down, once we get this piece installed, this is going to work on the left-hand side over here, I have to bring in the style sheet. Now, come on. Oh, rock star. We are done. So next part is the style sheet. Since we are working within the Gatsby starter default, we have a component. If I go into, I have it folder. That's not the right folder. 0401. In our source folder, or as I like to call it, circ, you'll hear me call that quite a bit. I like to call it the hooked on phonics style from way back in the day. The source folder, they have now a components folder right here. And components are what lives outside of the pages world. The pages are what you see here. However, the components control the pages like a meta information. And they have a layout.js. This is the master file for the Gatsby default starter where everything lives and breathes. I'm going to go into Visual Studio Code, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to take out their layout.css and paste in not that. I'm going to come over here, grab the import, and this just lives, once again, you can have it live in your index file.js, or in my case, I'm going to put it inside the layout component. I'm going to save this and come back and say Gatsby develop. So now what I want to do is I'm going to work inside the develop framework to get this navigation working. And As soon as I think it's going to go quickly, it's not. All right, here we go. Success, success, success. It should. The great part about the terminal, since we're right here watching the terminal like paint drying, is it gives you warning messages really easily to say, is it done properly or not done properly? And it's done properly. So just so you see, if we take out or if we go back and forth, if I just keep the layout.css, it turns to more of a traditional, like think that is it's a serif font, but it's almost like Georgia or some similar font going on up here. When I take out the layout CSS and I paste in the Bootstrap, it brings in all the components, including the sans serif font here, and it controls the size of the font depending upon where it is. So you will see a little change right off the bat when you bring in Bootstrap. All right, so the layout is really critical because this controls all the components. The layout contains the header, the main section, which includes the children, and the footer. For this example, we're going to only focus on the header area. Now to find the header, because this is a component, we're going to look at header. Header's up here, and header is in the same folder because a single period says same folder, double periods say go out of that folder. So we know there is a header component inside of, well, the components. So let's go find that header. So I'm in components of, once again, I'm using that Gatsby framework. So if I go back and I say header, here's where it all is. The first step I want to do is I want to take out all of their default design. To me, it's good, but Rebecca Purple, while I love it, I don't love it because I want to control my design with the React Bootstrap framework. I'm going to keep the header tag. That's not going to go away. I'm going to take out this div because I don't want to control with a max width of 960. I want to use the container. I don't want to use the H1 tag. Modern day design says that you do not use the H1 for your navigation. Use the H1 down below inside the children for the title of the page. So H1 goes away. That's a lot of removing of pieces. And for right now, I'm going to remove the link, which means if we took out all the top, link goes away, H1 goes away, div goes away. And here is why I really like Gatsby framework. If I save this, it's going to tell me, where is my terminal? There it is. If I save this, it's going to say, did you take everything out successfully? Oh, link is not defined. Link is defined, but is never used. That's okay. It did turn. So I'm going to just do a comment by hitting Command/, and we'll take it out for now. To me, I take things out. It runs successfully. And what we should have is the Gatsby default starter up in the top left. That's perfect. Now we're ready to actually put in the content. Just so also you know where I get the Gatsby default starter title from, if you notice this, the site title just says site title. That actually pulls, if we go back out of components and into, oh, it's over here. Let's go this way, then make it easier. If we go to the, whoa, what did I just do? Something. I just crashed the code. Ah! When you do this live, sometimes things happen. Let me go back 1 second, grab the header, grab the layout. I know what I did. I dragged the folder over so it created a different set of components. Just so we're clear here. There's the header, there's the layout. So back what I was saying was if we go way back to the Gatsby config section, where you'll find it is the title or the set metadata is Gatsby default starter. And so we have Gatsby default starter, just so you know where it is. I'm not going to touch this right now. It's just going to sit there and kind of just hang tight. What I want to do next is I want to focus on the actual header. I actually want to build my navigation inside this header section. And for that, we have to turn to React Bootstrap. Let's head over. I'm going to go into the React Bootstrap.github.io. Now we will use a few components from the Get Bootstrap section, which is the classic HTML, CSS, in conjunction with React Bootstrap. But the first thing I want to do is head over to components. And in here on the left-hand side, if we scroll down, it'll say Navs and Navbar. So what's the difference between a Navbar and a Nav? The Navbar, while it is alphabetical order technically in here, even though Navs and Navbar goes in that direction, your overall Navbar is everything inside of your navigation. The nav is just the words outside of the actual title in this design. So if we look at this example right here, the navbar is the parent up here. The background is light. You also can say dark if I do some stuff like that. Ooh, that's pretty cool. We'll switch back to light for right now. Hit escape to stop doing that. The Navbar brand is the logo. In this case, it's just React Bootstrap, which we'll use that site title with to control that. And then we'll explain how the Navbar toggle works. And now we get to the Navbar Collapse, and then the nav is where your actual navigation lives and breathes. So if you look at it, the navbar is the parent and the nav is the child, and it goes in Nav Link, Nav dropdown. And here's where I'm gonna do a little different customization to bring in some Gatsby pieces with the Get Bootstrap pieces. So with that, let's start typing some code. I'm gonna move this down for right now. Now don't save anything. Actually, what I'll do is I'll just kind of comment it out. It probably will yell at me because it's not gonna find anything important. No, it didn't yell at me. Even better. Things I try on the fly. And yes, now of course it is gone because when I use command / I can take off or I can add it in. So I'm just adding a comment for right now and I'll bring it back. I'm gonna say navbar. Now what you will see is I'm typing this the wrong way because I don't have any actual component listed up here in the Bootstrap. I jumped one step too far, and I'll show you what I mean by that. If I say navbar and I save it, ooh, navbar is not defined, so it doesn't know what it's gonna do. I love how the errors are yellow, but the errors are red, like, can't use this. So what I have to do, I did jump the gun, React Bootstrap.github.io. I forgot step number 3, which of course was to import. And I do use the less ideally version of this by just saying import and bringing it in. And of course, we're not using button, we're going to use navbar. So I'm going to say navbar. And if I save it, it should rebuild. And success. And what we should see, if we look at our design, is nothing but an empty box at the very top. Because I haven't put any content in yet, it's just kind of sitting the way it is. So everything's going to go inside of our navbar. I hit return key. And the next thing I want to do is then bring in the Navbar brand, aka logo, aka title. In this case, I'm going to say navbar. So that's going to follow this piece and say .brand. That's going to say the brand of the piece, and I'm going to say where the location is. href equals quotes / for the home page. Remember that site title? Let's bring it right back. Cut, paste, drop in. Now I have navbar, Navbar brand, href equals / quotes, site title, and now we have the Gatsby default starter. Pretty cool, looks great, awesome. Now that we have our Navbar brand in and we have it open and close, our next step is to actually add a collapsible area to actually have when you actually have, if I can talk straight today, the idea is that when you go bigger or smaller, you have the hamburger icon that shows up. We're gonna say navbar.toggle. What that's going to do is it's going to kick in to say when a certain breakpoint happens, we then want to have the hamburger menu show up. And we have to say aria controls equals navbar responsive. Now we're going to bring this name back. This is the name I gave it. And it's a single close, so it's like an image tag, slash, not exclamation point, slash greater than symbol. After that, we want to say what's going to collapse inside this toggle. I'm going to say navbar dot collapse. And there I'm going to say ID. ID is encoding. The rule I taught my students is how many school or student IDs did you have? 1. How many classes do you take at school? More than 1. IDs can be used once, while classes can be used more than once. In this case, I'm going to use the ID as navbar responsive. I'm going to say Navbar Collapse ID equals navbar responsive. Now it is case sensitive, so do remember if you are going to use any kind of camel case, uppercase, something case, any case, that you have to then use it in the right framework by having the capital R in my case match the capital R right here. This is going to open and close, so we're going to hit return, and now we have the Navbar Collapse inside right here. I'm then going to say, in this case, nav. So now we have a nav area, which of course it's going to yell at me because I don't have it yet up here. So as I type nav, let's say nav as well up in the React Bootstrap framework so we don't create the error message. I'm then going to write nav as equals ul, and I'll keep a class now. I'll keep the class name for a little later on. I'll show you the difference, the two pieces. I'm going to say nav as ul, and of course if we open a nav, we have to close the nav, which I love about the framework of VS Studio Code is because it just really makes a nice ability to open the nav, close the nav, and indent all right away. From here, I'm going to add is a nav.item, and this is going to act as li. In this case, I'm going to open and close as well. I like how clean everything is from navbar, 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 nav, 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 and then close, close, close. As you can see, this is our ul li as we're working inside the navbar. I'm then going to write link. And this is not a React Bootstrap. This is just old-fashioned link from Gatsby. I'm going to say link to, and I'll say slash page dash 2. Now the reason why I use the link, and I have to add a class name, so I'm going to say class name equals nav dash link. The reason why I use the link property is I can also say active class name equals active. This will kick into gear the active state within React Bootstrap. So the active class name works in conjunction with the link. This is where I deviate just a little bit when it comes to React Bootstrap. In the fact is they don't have this actual piece. You have to run a different single page app with the React app. That's a lot of apps and single pages, but basically the active class works primarily on a single page app versus a multi-page app when it comes to React Bootstrap. Again, React Bootstrap is written for React, not entirely for Gatsby. So I will differ a little bit right here in the design. I'll close it. It says link. I'm going to say page 2. Let's test and see if this works. That's a lot of code before I test, but you can't see anything work until we actually go this far. Let me save it. Oh, I have a problem. Oh, see, I love the terminal. Link is not defined because I had it commented out from before. Let's bring it back and let's see if the success, there it goes. And we have Gatsby default starter and page 2. Now it looks pretty good. And if I resize this, you'll see it actually doesn't kick in the hamburger menu because we haven't told React, or we haven't told really the design of it all, when to break or when to expand. So what I have to do is up in the navbar where everything gets controlled, I'm going to say expand equals MD for right now. Let me save it. Still works. And now when I go at the medium size or larger, you'll notice the hamburger comes in with just page 2 back and forth. If you want it to come sooner, like let's say you have a very, very, very long navigation, you can change the MD to LG for large. And now what's going to happen is earlier on, it's going to break the hamburger menu into the design. So if I say MD, it's not working. LG works. So I can control the hamburger menu that easily, and it auto puts it down below as the toggle comes into play. So if you do have a long navigation, you might want to set this to large. I'm going to set mine to medium right now because it's, well, just one word. That's the first step in designing your navigation using React Bootstrap. Now, if we circle back around to the active class name where it says active, let's take a look and see how that operates. If we come back here, Gatsby default starter is just black because it's just the name. In theory, I would have that design a little differently. I would actually put a picture in here, but for right now, it is what it is. If we come back to page 2, notice how the rollover happens on page 2. If I click on page 2, notice the color changes from gray to black. Let me show you another link just to show you what the differences are. If I copy and paste this nav item, I don't have a page 3, so this is not going to work if I click on it, so I won't. But I want to show you that if I save page 3, notice how that turns gray. And if we go back to the Gatsby default starter, both are gray until I click on page 2. That's pre-built into the the React Bootstrap framework. So do know you're welcome to change that. I just want to show you how it works by default in the overall design of the page. And once again, I did change from Nav Link to Link when it came to this design. Now, the other thing I also want to think about too is that I might want to have the navigation on the right-hand side of my design. I don't necessarily want to have it on the left-hand side. So in order to change that, it's actually fairly simple. In the nav, after the as UL section, I'm going to say class name. Now we are typing JSX, so class name is lowercase class, uppercase capital N, equals, and in quotes, we bring back a Gatsby. I keep saying Gatsby today. We're going to bring back a Bootstrap component that is still from the original Get Bootstrap. I'm going to say margin left auto. What that's going to do is it's going to make the margin left be auto, essentially pushing my navigation to the right. When I say this, notice how this is all the way on the right-hand side, and it moves in conjunction with the page. If you do have this set up, this is what I recommend. Let's bring a container in because most pages or most sites aren't going to go that far across the page. So if you do use the ML Auto, in general, I do recommend bringing in a container to, well, contain everything. That's how a container works. So if I want to bring a container back in, I'm going to type container and, oops, hit the greater than symbol, container. Now, of course, the container doesn't work yet. So I have to come up here, add the container, and for continuity, since the container is the parent of everything else, I generally move the container over to the left-hand side. That's just me being a little just OCD, I guess, when it comes to naming conventions. So I'm going to move the navbar all inside the container and paste that in. It never comes in perfectly, and I am like to have everything organized so it's very, very clean and orderly. So I did bring the container in, and now it kicks the container into Gatsby Starter, page 2, page 3, and now I can move my design back and forth, and this will hold with the hamburger on the left or hamburger on the right, and it drops down page 2, page 3. And you can go into the CSS and create a custom CSS file and design it all the way you want to. But I find that using this framework, I like my navigations on the right if I have too many words that just can't fit towards the left-hand side. And using something as simple as margin left auto moves it to the right, and we have our UL, LI, and the Nav Link right here, just so we kind of go full circle. The Nav Link, if we look at React Bootstrap and I go components and I go navs, the Nav Link on React Bootstrap is nav.link versus, if I can find it, it's not going to be here, so I'm not going to go there. But on a classic Bootstrap in HTML CSS, it's defined as nav-link. So I just use a little bit of a different twist. I bring in the link component with Gatsby Link, and that way I can use the active class name. And so the active kicks into gear, which of course you can then actively stylize in your CSS. If we look at this overall design, looks pretty darn good. We have our left and our right. But if we go and take a look at the actual code, let's take our local host and head over to Chrome side of things. And if we go over here and we click on inspect to inspect this property, you'll note that it says Navbar light. That's because by default there has to be a light or a dark designed by default within the actual framework in React Bootstrap. So we have a Navbar light, but how do we make it go dark? Let's say you want to design, say, the page that looks like this. So notice how this design at the top is dark. We have to write 2 more lines of code in order to do that. To change it from light to dark, I'm going to work in the navbar, because this is where everything is going to start and then trickle down into the child properties down below. We have expand medium for the toggle situation. I'm then going to write BG equals quotes dark by saying background dark. And let's save that and take a look and see how it looks. Awesome, almost awesome. It turned dark, but it didn't actually change the actual links to light because you have to flip it around. When it's light, links are dark. When the background's dark, links have to go light. So the last thing we have to do then in this area is say variant equals dark. That'll kick all the links to essentially white or gray. And now it pops up. Note also now when I go to page 2, it stays white because the active class also kicked into gear. Now this gets into more of a stylized customization, but because I utilize the container, the background stopped, and so there's this white area on the left and right hand side. I want to fill in that gap. So we know the container fills the space of the navbar, but there's a parent. There's the header. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that same variation of the background dark and just say header class name equals, and I will say bg-dark. The bg-dark just goes full circle back to the classic Bootstrap, and this is the React Bootstrap version. So it's the same thing, just written twice. The reason why I did it twice basically is because I want to fulfill these right and left hand sides. Now, even though it's written twice, I could take this out and it would work, but I find by writing that piece in, it does help it. So it's up to you. You can just keep the background dark at the top or duplicate it down below. That's up to you. But the important part is you have a background dark either in the navbar. So if we save it again, we can say BG equals dark for the navbar, and or take it out and keep class name BG dark in the header if my entire design calls for that. Once again, the design has to be where it's going to be. And so once again, if I click in page 2, it works fine in dark mode using variant dark and class name BG dark or BG equals dark. And that's how you can set a dark mode to your design. Check us out on patreon.com where you can download the source code at any of these videos you see here, and supporting us just costs at minimum $3 per month. Thank you for your support.